Hello there, welcome to another Studio Calico video. This is Jennifer McGuire. In this video I'm going to show you how to create some fun pieces with stamps along with paper, and I'll show you that in a moment. And this all uses the November kit and the add-ons. So here's a quick look at the layout that I created using these kits, and I'm going to show you all these different pieces on here that were created with stamps but in a little bit of a different way. So here's a close-up look at the first pieces I'm going to show you. All these little shapes on the bottom were created with stamps, and I'll show you how. So I have a bunch of pieces of paper cut from these kits, and it's nice because they all go together really nicely because they are from the same kits. And I've just cut different strips from the papers that I like the most. Now I'm taking any ink here. It really doesn't matter what ink. I like this malted milk ink from Jenny Bolin because it's really light. And I'm going to stamp this Studio Calico image, it's a pattern image, onto the back side of the papers that I want to use. So I'm just going to stamp it on the back side of all the pattern papers, and I'm going to end up cutting them out and using the front side. So I'm just going to stamp this on a bunch, and then I'll go through and cut these out. Now the reason I'm doing this is I kind of wanted to end up with the shapes of this stamp. I really like the shape of the stamp, but not use this stamping per se. So you'll see here I'm just going to cut this out, and then I'll end up with this cute little shape. It looks like a die cut when I'm done. And there we have it. So now I'm going to do this with a bunch of the pieces. I stamped on the back of all of these, and I'm going to cut them out. And now I can arrange these pieces however I want. I can do it how the stamp was originally intended, or I could piece them together here however I want. Now this can take some time, so one of the things I do to speed it up is I stamp it on one piece, but I cut out two pieces at once. So I'll end up with two shapes that are cut from two different pieces of paper, and I just had to cut them once. So that's just an easy trick. Now on some of these I did want to have the shape of the stamp, so I'm stamping it with Versamark ink right onto the front of the papers that I want to use, and then I'm going to shake on some white embossing powder. So this gives me a nice bright white trim to the shapes, and the other shapes will just have nothing on the edge. So it just gives some nice contrast, gives a variety. So I'll just heat this up with a heat gun. Any white embossing powder works great for this. I like either the Hero Arts or the White Zing from American Crafts. So I'll just heat this up and then I'll cut some out. So here I have the various shapes. Now these shapes are good as is, but I think it looks better if you give it a defined edge. And I use an ink blending tool in Distress Ink to do this. It's really quick and easy to do. And I'm using the Vintage Photo here on the brown. Now you could use other inks in any kind of small foam makeup applicator, but the Distress Inks really blend nicely and give you a nice defined edge. Now for the blue and green pieces I'm going to use the Broken China Blue Distress Ink, and just using inks that match the papers just to give it a nice little finished look. And there I've arranged some of them on the layout, and I did it in a few different spots on the layout just to kind of pull it together, 3 different areas. I also wanted to show you how I created the butterflies. I did the same thing. There's just this great butterfly set in one of the November add-ons. I think it's fabulous. However, I wanted to have less of an ornate butterfly on this layout. Since it's a picture of my son and I, it was a little bit distracting, so I just want the shape of a butterfly but not the detail. So I'm stamping it on the back of some of the papers that I like, and then I will again cut these out. I'm just using black ink so it would show up on that first paper that had some black on the back. And it doesn't matter what ink you use here because you're just going to cut it out and flip it over. So now that I've cut these out, I'm again going to give it a nice defined edge with my Peeled Paint Distress Ink and ink blending tool. And it's real easy to kind of work into the small tight areas of this cutout image. Now to give the body a little bit of definition, I like to fold it in half and then rub ink right onto the body of the butterfly, and there you have it. You've got a nice finished butterfly, and it looks a lot different than the stamp that you originally started with. So now I wanted to add some antenna onto this. I don't like to cut out the antenna, so I just like to use string. I just take a piece of string and I fold it in half in a V. And then I take a tiny bit of Glossy Accents, which is a super strong adhesive. I'm going to put a little bit right behind the head of the butterfly. And then I'll put the folded end of that string right into that glue, and I'll just hold it there for a second. And this dries pretty quickly, and then when it is dry, I'm just going to trim off the antenna and they will stay put forever. So you can see some of the finished butterflies there. And I also wanted to show you, I created that embossed background too. Tone-on-tone embossing is a great way to add a little something to some plain cardstock, and there's another look at it. And this is just done on regular cardstock, and it works best on cardstock that's solid throughout, not white on the other side or a white core. So you're going to ink up your stamp and stamp it with Versamark ink right onto some teal colored cardstock here. And this is really easy. These clear stamps are really easy to line up, so I can just keep stamping this across the page. Now you'll notice I didn't stamp that edge completely, so I'm just going to stamp right over it again since this is a repeating pattern that's real easy to do. And this stamp press from Fiskars really makes it easy to line things up. Now I'm going to go back and kind of add another row of the pattern in. And it's fun because you could position this in many different ways and get many different looks out of it. And after I've stamped this whole strip, I'm just going to add some clear embossing powder and heat it. And this gives a great tone-on-tone and raised image that really is quite striking on a layout. And you can see it there behind some of the little pieces that we created before. Next, I wanted to show you a fun way to use the Mr. Huey's along with glossy accents to give a completely different look to wood embellishments. And this is what I did here on the word travel. So I've got these great wood letters from one of the add-on kits from this month, and I'm just putting adhesive along a strip of scrap paper, and I'm going to stick all these letters onto it just to kind of hold them together in one place so that when I go to spray them, they're all together and I don't have to pick them up. So I put it in a plastic box that I spray in, and I'm just spraying the classic white Studio Calico Mr. Huey's onto it. And you'll see that this is a really quick and easy way to turn these perfectly white. You could use other colors also. You could do paint for this, but again, it would take a lot more time. Now, after these have dried some, what I'm going to do is use the glossy accents, which is a really strong adhesive, to glue these in place on my layout where I want them to be. And I'm just going to kind of position them across the top here. Now, I also wanted to give a nice finished look to this, to these letters. And also, I want to make sure that the white doesn't come off. So I'm taking the glossy accents and also using it for a finishing touch. So I'm just squeezing a bunch of it onto each of the letters and using the nozzle to kind of move it around. Now, what's fun, and you really can't see in the video, is that it picks up some of that white and kind of makes this swirly, like white cloud in the glossy accents. It kind of picks it up and moves it all around, and it's really quite cool. So you're creating a really cool effect by mixing these basically on top of the letters. You can kind of see it here, but not much, and it gives it a nice finished raised look when you're all done. So I hope you enjoyed these little tips on using the November kits and add-ons, and if you have any questions, please visit the Studio Calico blog.